Central and Eastern European countries. We have Jan Makacek, a journalist. So we have a multidisciplinary crowd, I can say, because we have a journalist, a sociologist, and we also have a political scientist. So we can view various angles of the same topic. We have Oľga Gyárfášová, a sociologist, and Jordan Anyedi, a political scientist. So I think we have all the tools and approaches in one hand to look at the issues from a multidisciplinary perspective. I'm not going to take the speaker's time, but I want to start with a quotation of Dahrendorf, who said that it takes, a very famous quotation of course, who said that it takes 6 months to change a political regime, 6 years to change the economy, and 60 years to change the society. So what I want to really ask from the speakers is that what happened is 60 years, of course, didn't pass since 2004, but we have to look back now a little, because 2014 is a year of anniversaries, and not only celebrating the anniversary of joining the European Union, but also 25 years of celebrating the fall of the Berlin Wall as well. And we have another celebration also of the First World War, so it's a year of anniversaries. So we have to stop for a moment and say what happened in this region with these countries. 60 years haven't passed them, but 10 years it's a good period of time to analyze. We are before a European Parliament election as well, which is going to be a new kind of election due to the changes of the Lisbon Treaty. And we are celebrating these anniversaries as well. So my question is, how did the Central and Eastern European countries change during these 10 years? Is it true that these countries were Europeanized? Can we say that, or can we claim that they are still in a kind of transitional period of post-communism? So where are we in this regard? And also we can ask the question that what happened with these CE countries? Is it true that they adopted the norms, the values, the way of behavior of the European Union? Or, in the contrary, we can also claim that they became more critical to the European Union. They, in a way, we can say that there was a shift between adapting the European norms to emancipating from Europe. So they are more critical, they represent more often the national interest at various institutions of the European Union. What happened in these 10 years? The EU itself changed a lot during these 10 years. The EU itself is in a severe crisis nowadays, you can say. The European Union itself cannot look into the mirror and provide a credible image of itself either. And we can also say this for the economic, political and social issues too. So the answers are manifold, but we can provide these questions. But it's interesting also to ask the speakers, how do they categorize, what kind of terminology they use for the Central and Eastern European region. Are we using the non-member state categories? So they are old member state, non-member state. Western Europe, Eastern Europe. So where are these division lines on the map of the continent? There is a rival category also, which was born due to the crisis, economic and financial crisis. So now we don't only have the West-East division line, but we have the North-South also. So there is a rivalry between these division lines, but we also have to look at it. We grown up, and I want just a little advertisement for a new book. So there is just for the cover that we put a little boy there who is 10 years old and who has kids, knows that when you measure your kids how many centimeters they grow each year, you put it somewhere on the door and you always mark this new line, and you are very happy that the kid is grown up with 2 centimeters and I don't know how many kilos you also measure. So what does it mean? Are we grown up to be at the table of Europe, or we still have some anomalies in this region which we are not able to overcome? I'm not going to continue with my questions. I have a lot of questions, but I would be very interested in answers for these questions from various disciplines that are represented at this table. So let's start with the lady, with Olga's presentation, who is going to talk about a very interesting issue, Euroscepticism. And I have a question to you, Olga. Is it true that we have a unique version of Euroscepticism in Central and Eastern Europe, or is it very similar to Western type of Euroscepticism?
Okay, so I'm very glad that I'm not the only one to answer your question, because it's so complex and multi-dimensional. And in addition to my thanks to the organizers, I have to apologize in advance at the beginning of my presentation, because I not only changed the title a little bit, but I think it's also a quite semi-coherent presentation, which is looking not only on the actors, not only on the attitudes, but the issue, the EU agenda itself. So how did it change across these 10 years? How did it travel from different arenas and from different levels of saliency? And of course, so why do we face such an increase of Eurosceptical and Eurocritical voices? So it will be in a comparative perspective here and there, also in time, but mostly focus on the country which I know best, and this is Slovakia. So what was the initial situation when we look 10 years ago before the accession? So I think that the general expectations, and this was written or said, for example, by Kazmude, was mentioned already a few times here, that we can expect in the new member states similar cleavage as it was in regard to the transition. And that we will face the center-periphery division, which will divide winners and losers of the integration this time, and this will generate a kind of Eurosceptical, Euro-critical voices within the member state. This did not happen, and my or one illustration which can illustrate this is Poland. So Poland was a country with relatively high portion of EU critical voices, especially from the very specific segment of the population, the farmers, who were not so enthusiastic about the country joining EU, but this happened after they joined, and I think that also in other countries, so we can observe a certain honeymoon in relation towards the European Union. Of course, this was mostly embedded in social and economic benefits, and so we can see that really the EU integration was a balanced issue, so there were not many disputes about yes and no, and that this background permissive consensus was really decisive for the entire perception and also the structuring of the EU issue. However, so we saw that, and I think that the first wake-up call was the first EP election in 2004, shortly after the accession. We saw that this issue is not salient enough for the voters and also not for the political parties. So I think it does not make a lot of sense to ask what is first and what followed the not relevance of these two sides. my side, but definitely so many of my colleagues in the older member states were surprised how low the turnout in this election was, and how does it come together with the enthusiasm and with the slogans back to the Europe. So once you are in, so you are not interested to use your European citizens' rights and to vote for your representation at the EU level. And Slovakia was really the lowest among all the other countries, with historically lowest turnout in the entire history of the European Parliament election. So then I see the milestone in the politicization of the European agenda, also for the national political competition. So for Slovakia it was definitely the Greek bailout, the Greek loan. So the issue came in addition to the relevance of these. Moreover, it came in time of the election campaign, so it really was something what made many people aware that European membership is not just about receiving, but it's also about certain solidarity. And with the crisis, with the financial and debt crisis, also this blaming game or scapegoating game, which also was mentioned several times in the morning sessions, came to the surface. So EU or Europe was here to blame for the failures and for the low performance of the economy. Of course, on the other side, all the European successes were nationalized in favor of the national politicians. So this is more or less the initial situation with the EU issue. How was it perceived? I've added one chart, one graph, just to give a very brief illustration about how the situation looks like in Visegrad 4 countries. So it's not the most recent one, but I think that this distribution, and it's I think regardless of what of the many indicators we take, this one is about the benefits. So we see that the distribution of support for EU among the Visegrad countries is similar to this. So that means Poland and Slovakia on the one side, and Hungary, Czech Republic with the under-average support for EU membership or trust towards the European Union, or bad thing, good thing. So I think it's not so relevant which of these indicators we take. So now let's have a look on what has changed on the European agenda 10 years later. So what is the situation we have now, shortly before the third European Parliament election? So we saw that the European agenda was more successful when it was used as an instrumentalized agenda, so not as something what is important for our identity, important for our belonging to the Western space, or not even important in terms of security. It's not even now used in vis-a-vis the Ukrainian crisis, but instrumentalized as a guarantee for good economic conditions or scapegoat for the misery. So that means that also the public perception is mostly focused on the utilitarian model, so that this is still something what is explaining the support for EU mostly. So this it's economy stupid, it's really still very much valid, and there were very rare voices in the recent debates vis-à-vis the 10th anniversary that okay, so we still are receivers, but it can change in next 7-10 years. So what will be the time, what will be the bond to the European Union then? Next, so EU agenda, in spite of this politicization which came with the crisis, is still very much embedded in the national political discourse, and I think that the saying that European election is neither European nor election, because it's not about Europe issues, it's about national issues, and the link between the voting results, election results, and the executive is missing, or it's not the same as the national level. So I think in this regard, so still we can see that the national issues are dominating the political competition, and the EU issues so really have a very limited impact on the pattern of political competition. So that means that this cleavage, okay, so it's emerging, so it's maybe, so we will see it after the election as more relevant, but still not the decisive ones. So that means that we can say that the agenda is still stuck somewhere in between the previous irrelevance and expected future salience, and so of course it will be interesting to follow how it will develop. Now, so Eurosceptic positions or the sources of Euroscepticism in newer member states, so not the new ones anymore, but those that I'm concentrating on the 4 Visegrad countries here in the region. So in Slovakia, so we do have 2 types or 2 patterns, 2 images of Eurosceptical parties. So one is this, I would call it the traditional Euroscepticism, which is looking at the European Union as an enemy. So this is the anti-globalization or also anti-national unity, identity narrative, and we have now 2 parties which are competing which one will be the more radical. This is the traditional Slovak National Party, SNS, which is using for this election the slogan, with EU we would like to be partners, not slaves. So this very expressional term is used for the campaign billboards, and the other extreme right party, the People's Party, our Slovakia, LSNS, so it's a relatively new actor which is growing in its impact and in its relevance. So some of you may recall that this is the party which won the regional election in November last year in 1 out of 8 regions in Slovakia. So this party is running for the European Parliament election, and it's very likely that it will have 1 or maybe 2 out of 13 seats which are for Slovakia. The other phase, the other side of Euroscepticism is, we can call it liberal Euroscepticism, which is showing European Union with all the redistribution as a socialism. So this is a socialistic way of handling the economy, and we do not want to make solidarity with those who are not disciplined, with those who are not meeting all the budgetary standards, who are not able to have a discipline in their own public finances. And so this is also a relatively new party, Freedom and Solidarity, which is really making, trying to challenge, to appeal the voters on this type of Euroscepticism. So I think that the Czech Republic will be better in the hands of Mr. Macháček, but I think that Czech Republic is one of the few countries which also has the party which could be categorized as a left, radical left party, and is using the usual issue usually used by the more established countries, these anti-immigrant issues and issue of social chauvinism. We had Hungary, so we discussed it, so I think that here the representative is the Jobbik party with nationalistic and xenophobic stances, and we do not have Poland in our panel, but I think that Prawo and Spravodlivost is a party which is also Eurosceptic. But there is one feature which I see as common for several countries, and these are new, unknown, unpredictable alternative parties, partially also using the populistic ways of appealing, addressing, but it's maybe discussion for how to categorize them, but this is the party ANO now in the Czech Republic. This is the party of ordinary people and independent personalities in Slovakia. So that means party which emerged as a new alternative to the mainstream established parties, and they are offering their novelty as something what is an added value for the voters. And I think that the rise of these types of party was mostly in this region in the election 2010 to 12, 13 in the Czech Republic, and I think that many of these parties will make it in the European Parliament, what will be a new phenomenon there. Okay, and I would like to close, and this is the semi-coherence of my presentation with a relatively new experience I had now with the voting advice application. I think Andrej will talk more about it. And I was responsible for the Slovak part, the Slovak coding of the Slovak political parties. And here I think that out of this exercise, we saw some patterns of how the political parties are positioned towards the issues which are relevant either for national or for European level of political competition. And here are the four main models with some sub patterns, and I think that this is again something what is more general for the newer state, that okay, so we have issues where we can find a broad consensus, like euro in Slovakia. We want euros, we don't want to give up euro. But then there are some problematic positions which I think make the transparency of the political parties really a difficult puzzle for the voters, because many of the parties are showing double faces. So they have one face for the European Union and the other for the domestic constituency, like the ruling party Smer in Slovakia on the European level is supporting all the environmental standards. On the domestic level is saying, oh no, so this will be difficult for our economy, so it's too tough, so we will not meet them. Then we see a lot of inconsistencies. So we see inconsistencies within the party. So you have two candidates of the same party saying completely different things. We have differences when a party is against its own declared ideological position, or with inconsistency with the EU group's position. So, like again, an example of Smer party, which is we say self-declared social democratic party, not having or using the EU or the obvious issue of social democrats, or simply having some positions which are typical for this ideological position. And the fourth, I call it non-opinionness or no opinion, and so this was a specific challenge to find opinion of political parties where they simply have no idea, no position. And I think many relevant European issues are really not covered by many of the political parties in Slovakia. And finally, so the results of this positioning, so you can see, so there were in this EU box 3 dimensions, so the European integration dimension, the traditional left-right economic, and the conservative versus liberal. And you see here these two nationalistic parties, even with this newer, more radical one, going really to the EU reject position, even not Eurosceptical, but EU reject position, and the Freedom and Solidarity Party, which is anti-EU, but having a different position on the economic axis. And maybe one more comment on this, that you see that parties which are extreme right nationalistic parties are using very left-oriented economic rhetoric on the economic issue or role of state in economic issue. And the other picture is the same or similar. Only we have conservative position and liberal position. So again, so this is an anonymous user of the VAA, and so this is the Liberal Party with really having or liberal position vis-a-vis those which are conservative. And here you also see that the Smer party, so-called Social Democratic Party, is really very conservative in terms of conservative-liberal division. Maybe one more comment to these patterns of position that what made this coding really a challenging job is that some of the political parties, like Christian Democratic Movement, a traditional party in Slovakia, is profiling itself just on one dimension, so they do not use the full scale of positioning, but they are using just the conservative agenda, fighting the liberal EU and so on, but they do not have a full dimension positioning. So an attempt to show you the development of EU agenda in this part of the EU member states, so definitely an increase of EU critical positions, so it's appealing to the voters because really so EU is in the rhetoric very often blamed for all the difficulties, and I think that not only these extreme parties are moving towards less EU, but I think that the entire mainstream is moving to less pro-EU position, so to say. And I will close with a cartoon which was today published in Slovak Daily. A boy is asking, so who are the Eurosceptics? The Eurosceptics are all those who are running for European Parliament. So I think that with this I would like to thank you for your attention.